Hello. This time I am working with iWay. This is IIT showing here. I've got a couple flows I'm going to show you. And the reason is that I wanted to show a couple of techniques that I've used with using iWay functions in iFL as part of my flows. So obviously you got a whole lot of different types of objects that can end up in your flows, and a lot of them communicate messages to a lot of different systems and in a lot of different languages and formats. So as a result, you need to have some flexibility in terms of the information that you pass and how you pass it. Here I'm using iWay functions are documented here in the functional language reference guide. The one you're probably going to use the most often is this sreg. That's how you store a variable in iFL, for those who are not as familiar or are maybe more familiar with the web focus side of things. But there are other ones that are pretty useful too, and they're pretty similar to a lot of functions in other languages, including web focus. There's a whole bunch of them, as you can see. I'm going to be using some of them here in these examples. There's one problem, however. The problem is that if you quote any string, including an iWay function, gets passed as literal text. And that's a little bit problematic because if I have an sreg, I want it to pass, I guess, as the kind of like processed sreg value. I want it to actually get the value that it represents, not pass the actual string, underscore sreg, whatever. So to start with, first, I've got this flow. This flow basically consumes some EDI that I have, and I want it to write into my database so that when I get the EDI document, it's also added to my database, which happens to be MariaDB, but any relational database for the most part will be using SQL as the language that it's entered as. And when I was putting this together, I knew what I wanted to write in. I wanted to write in something like this. But those of you who are familiar with SQL probably can see where the issue would be right away, and that's that in SQL, you must quote any literal values. Right, so I need a comma there. You need to quote any literal values. The problem is once you start quoting things, these are suddenly treated as literals, as actual literals. But I don't get like the sreg value from my original message that I want to keep. So I had to figure out a way around it. And in this case, what came in handy was this concat function. Basically what I did, concat function, by the way, pull up the doc for that. And the concat function basically stick in whatever you want to concatenate together, and you wrap each of the different things that you want to join in quotes. And you can see that's what I did here. So I have my concat function, and then my first argument here, which is all the stuff before I get to my first variable. Quoted that. Or, you can quote each thing that you're concatenating. Then I had this as my next argument, which I did not concatenate. Or sorry, I did not quote. It's getting concatenated though. You can see the comma here, and then I'm inserting a comma. And then the next thing I'm concatenating in is the next sreg. Once again, using quotes to insert comma. That doesn't get treated as a separate argument. Or so that does get treated as a separate argument, rather. And then inserting in the sreg. And then as a result of this SQL statement, I was able to automatically insert records into my database. As you can see here, it includes the timestamp, product ID, partner ID, all the stuff that I was including in my SQL there. And then here I have another example. In this case, it ended up being a little bit trickier. This time I was using a lot of REST calls. In this case, I had a payload that was JSON that I had to send to my server to get processed by the API there. And JSON, of course, also needs everything to be quoted. What I was trying to do is pass in something like this, So you can see here that the function needed to be included together with some plain text, and that obviously causes some challenges as well. And we had a uh, couple different examples of that function that needed to be used. So what I had to do here in this case is kind of like a twofold type of thing. First, I have my concat function, as you can see here. And what I ended up doing there is ended up taking this chunk here, concatenating it with this here, concatenating in this section, and this I think was the real problem. I guess these two. And then adding in this. Oh yeah, and then we had another one here. This one was no functions included in this one. Had to include that as well. The problem here is that we had multiple actual like completely quoted strings, and we had like some extra commas and stuff that also needed to be processed. So if I had these just as quotes, it's treating that as an additional argument, and the quotes were disappearing. So that was a problem. So what I did in that case was I took that entire concatenated string and I used this replace function as kind of a cheat to get around the fact that I had to have quotes everywhere for my valid JSON string. So in this case, I took the tilde character, which I knew that character wasn't going to occur at any point in my actual message. If it will occur in your message and you're trying this, then obviously you can pick like a different character or even like a string that you know isn't going to pop up like multiple characters in sequence that you're certain are not going to pop up. And then you can see here with this backslash, I had to escape the double quote character. So I'm swapping out all the tilde characters for double quote characters per this replace function. And then similarly to the last one, as a result, you can see that it was able to generate these tickets. This is like my ticketing system that it generated into. I run this obviously numerous times. You can see by the number of tickets that were created. But you can see here, I'll pull up the, I have my title generated with my custom string. Custom string happens to be just the tag category. And then I have the body of my ticket included in here. So overall, that technique worked pretty well, and you might need to add a little bit, try some additional changes and use some different functions depending on your need and the format that the message is in that you're trying to pass. But overall, it provides a lot of flexibility in terms of using iFL and iFL functions, and can be a good way to get around some of the limitations in terms of quoted strings and the quotes that are required by your message formats that you're using.